Exposed, 94 guests were boycotted, but my wedding became an unexpected celebration of love. Sarah Miller felt the weight of every letter she penned while sending out her wedding invitations. Each envelope was a carefully curated piece of joy, a reflection of her relationship with Jake, the man she loved fiercely. However, as she sat on her couch, scanning the responses, she felt the ground shift beneath her. The echo of her father's public statement lingered in her mind, "He's beneath you." Those 5 words planted seeds of doubt, watering an already precarious landscape of anxieties that spiraled within her. Her phone buzzed with more messages from the town's elite, its silence almost a tangible rejection. A growing dread coiled in her stomach as she recalled Mrs. Randolph, once a surrogate aunt, now an orchestrator of the boycott. The reality sank deep. 94 familiar names were now crossed off her guest list, a strategic assault meant to uphold her father's vision of family honor. But the cost was heavy. Relatives turned their backs, childhood friends distanced themselves, and the joyous day she had meticulously dreamed of felt tainted by betrayal. As doubt settled in, Sarah's heart sank lower. Was loyalty to her family worth losing the love that grounded her? Anxiety made her fingers tremble, and she could hardly breathe. The absolute sense of rejection twisted into fear. Would this wedding, the cradle of her hopes and dreams, become a painful reminder of her roots? Life as an elementary teacher immersed in creating safe spaces for children felt starkly different from this alienating scrutiny. It became unbearable. With each inhalation, it became harder to shake off her father's voice, as if it echoed through the walls of her mind. A sense of unease filled her dreams blurred with reality, leaving her a prisoner of expectations and social prejudices. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Plopping down on her cozy love seat, Sarah sought solace in her steaming cup of chamomile, but warmth evaded her. The thought swirled, she should have felt excitement as she envisioned herself walking down the aisle, but instead, shame loomed where her joy once resided. The thought of uninvited guests wandering into her cherished day sent chills down her spine. What would they think? What if the whispers of disapproval cut her deeper than anticipated, slicing through all that she held dear? The weight of her father's judgment consumed her, pressing down with relentless force. How did she reconcile the woman she aspired to be with the daughter who bore the burden of her family's expectations? The resolve to stand with Jake felt like grasping at smoke, fugitive and intangible. As the date drew closer, a storm brewed within. A climactic moment was looming ahead, a confrontation that could either solidify her choice to fight for love or capitulate to her father's relentless disapproval. Just as her heart pounded with the impossible choice ahead, a rustling at the door drew her attention, a whisper of something new, something unexpected. A shiver raced through her. Whoever it was, they might just change everything. Would Sarah have the courage to redefine her future? Sarah's heart thundered as she approached the door, each beat echoing her uncertainty. She hesitated, the fear of facing yet another judgment weighing her down. But the persistent rustling urged her forward, and she grasped the doorknob, taking a deep breath. Swinging the door open revealed not a foe, but a friend, a familiar face that ignited a spark of hope. "Rachel!" Sarah exclaimed, stepping back to let her closest confidant in. Rachel's bright smile was a stark contrast to the gray clouds that had settled over Sarah's heart. The warmth of her presence enveloped Sarah, if only temporarily shielding her from the storm of loneliness that had encircled her. "I saw the invitation fiasco on social media," Rachel said, her voice steady, laced with empathy. "I couldn't just stand by. You deserve to be celebrated, not shamed." As Rachel spoke, Sarah felt something shift within her, an awakening of sorts, a reminder of her purpose. Teaching children had taught her resilience, every day held the promise of new beginnings and fresh perspectives. Had she forgotten that amidst the chaos? "Thank you for coming," Sarah replied, her voice cracking slightly. "I don't know what to do." I feel torn between my family and Jake. It's suffocating. You're not alone in this, Rachel said, taking a seat on the love seat beside her. Let us talk through it. What do you want? Not what they want, what do you want for yourself? The question hung heavy in the air, demanding introspection. Sarah's mind danced around the answer, but a deeper truth lay buried beneath the conflict. I want the wedding I planned, with the people who support us. I want to feel free, she admitted, her voice strengthening as she spoke. But fear of rejection holds me back. I keep thinking about what they'll say, how they'll judge me. Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. Rejection isn't the end. Sometimes, it's a chance for clarity. You have a choice to make, stand your ground or let fear dictate your future. We both know you've got the strength inside you. As Rachel laid out the possibilities, Sarah began to envision a path forward, one where her love for Jake was paramount. Could she really sacrifice everything she wanted for the fleeting comfort of familial acceptance? Determination surged in her veins. She thought of her students and the lessons she taught about self-advocacy and standing firm in one's truth. I have to fight for my happiness, Sarah whispered, more to herself than to Rachel. It grew into a vow. Let us plan, Rachel suggested, her enthusiasm infectious. We can create a new guest list together, ones that matter. We can reframe this day as a celebration of your love, just like it should be. Emboldened, Sarah grappled with her resistance, questioning the nature of loyalty. Each name on her guest list reflected attachments to the past that were now unsettling. She thought of her students, how they blossomed in environments free of judgment and filled with acceptance. Was she not deserving of that same environment? With renewed drive, she took out a fresh notepad, inspired by the calm that Rachel's presence brought. Let us write down everyone who truly supports us, she said, and began to jot down names of those who inspired her, the friends who stood by her side, the family who embraced Jake despite the odds. As they compiled a new guest list, they began to envision the wedding anew, a beautiful tapestry of love and authenticity. Just as she felt a sense of control returning to her life, Sarah's phone buzzed. A message from her father flashed on the screen, an ominous reminder of the battle yet to be fought. The time had come to face the truth, Sarah thought as anxiety mingled with determination. Would she answer the call or let it go? The decision loomed before her like a precipice, a choice that would define not just her wedding day but the very fabric of her identity. A tense silence enveloped the room as Sarah stared at her phone, the message from her father pulsating with unspoken words. Each tick of the clock felt magnified in the hazy stillness, as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting for her response. Part of her wanted to dismiss the message, to allow it to fade into the background noise of her tumultuous emotions. But there was another part, the one that had been ignited by Rachel's presence, that craved clarity. I should answer it, Sarah finally said, surprising herself with the firmness in her tone. Rachel's nod was encouraging, she understood. With trembling fingers, Sarah swiped the screen and opened the message, "We need to talk about the wedding. It's important." The words were formal, lacking warmth but dripping with expectation. "Do you want to do this now?" Rachel asked delicately. Doubt washed over Sarah like a cold wave, crashing against her newfound resolve. "I have to. If this is going to change anything, it should start now." As she hit the call button, her heart raced anew, anticipation and dread coiling within her like a tightly wound spring. "Dad?" she said once he answered, her voice catching slightly, revealing her unease. "Sarah, I think we need to discuss your wedding plans." "Your mother and I, your plans or my plans?" "Because the way I see it, they're two different things," Sarah shot back, surprising herself with her boldness. "Your mother is quite upset. You've strayed from what we expected, and the invitation situation, it doesn't reflect well on the family. You're making a mistake." Those words sliced through Sarah, deeper than she cared to acknowledge. She had heard this narrative before, the unyielding expectation to conform buried under layers of familial loyalty. But this time, she felt something within her flicker. She was worth more than their definition of success. "Dad, this wedding is about Jake and me." Not you, not mom, and not your expectations. I want to celebrate our relationship, not bow to outdated traditions, she asserted, her resolve solidifying with each syllable. After a heavy pause, her father's voice returned, softer and more contemplative. But what about your mother's feelings? She had dreams for this day, Sarah. It's not just about you whose dreams? She interrupted, agitated. I know you both love me, but have you ever considered what I truly want? Do any of your dreams include my happiness? That's not fair, Sarah. His sigh resonated in her ears, and she could almost visualize him pinching the bridge of his nose, a familiar gesture that signaled frustration. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, she replied, the adrenaline of challenging him pushing her forward. The truth is, this isn't just about a wedding. It's about my life. I'm done being the daughter who makes everyone else happy at the cost of my own joy. The air hung thick with tension. For a moment, silence spread across the line like a net waiting to ensnare her determination. Could she have risked all this for the off chance of a breakthrough? Sarah, he began, but she was not ready to let him steer the conversation. No, Dad. I'm putting my foot down. I want you to support my choices, even if they aren't what you envisioned. If you can't do that, I'm sorry, but we might have to rethink our relationship. His audibly sharp intake of breath echoed through her phone, freezing her in place. Had she gone too far? As uncertainty clawed at her bravado, she felt Rachel's steady hand on her back, a silent affirmation that she wasn't alone in this confrontation. In that moment, Sarah recognized that there was power in risk. Sometimes emotional upheaval was necessary for growth. I'll talk to your mother, he finally said, his voice subdued, masking a wealth of unanswered questions. But this will take time. I can't promise you that she will accept this easily. Neither can I, Sarah retorted with a fleeting hint of defiance. But I owe it to myself to try. With a shaky breath, she ended the call, the resolve in her chest both liberating and terrifying. Had she fueled a fire that couldn't be put out, or had she ignited the spark of understanding? As she looked at Rachel, who appeared equally shocked and proud, Sarah felt a sense of exhilaration. She had begun to carve out her own space, one that contained love, hope, and the possibility of acceptance. Now the question loomed heavy: was she prepared to confront the reactions of those who loved her most? Or would they draw the lines that divided them further? The uncertainty about her next move loomed large, ready to challenge everything she had fought for thus far. Sarah's heart pounded beneath her chest as she absorbed the aftermath of the call. There was a gaping chasm of uncertainty at her feet, a potential abyss that could devour her if she stumbled. Yet, nestled within that dread was a flicker of hope, a feeling she hadn't permitted herself in years. Rachel's presence grounded her, and Sarah could feel an unfamiliar but invigorating strength coursing through her. Are you okay? Rachel asked, sensing the tumult of emotions swirling around Sarah. Yeah, I think so, Sarah replied, but her voice trembled slightly. The truth was she felt a mixture of excitement and terror. She had crossed an invisible line into a territory she had long been afraid to enter. Listen, Rachel continued, this is huge. You just claimed your voice, your life. It's not easy to do that, especially with your family. I don't know what's next. What if they don't respond the way I hope they will? This ugly doubt gnawed at Sarah, reviving the age-old fear of disappointment imprinted in her psyche. Rachel's face softened, her eyes filled with understanding. You're on a path to define your happiness. They may be resistant at first, but that's their process. You can't control that. Maybe, Sarah murmured, still unconvinced. Think about it. You said the wedding is about you and Jake. What if it could be more than that? A statement of who you are? Rachel leaned closer, her enthusiasm infectious. You can create your own traditions, your own celebration. It can reflect everything you value. The thought was both exhilarating and unnerving. Could she really do that? Could she arrange a ceremony that resonated with her identity, her desires? I've never really thought about it, she admitted, a flicker of curiosity igniting within her. You should. Maybe enlist Jake in this. It's about both of you, after all. Rachel offered a supportive smile. And think about how liberating it is to just shut down the negativity. Focus on what you want. The idea resonated deeply within Sarah. This could truly be her moment to break free from the constraints of expectation, to craft a celebration that reflected her values. But the weight of her parents' disappointment threatened to overshadow her vision. If I take the reins, won't they just label it a rejection? She questioned, unease creeping back in. But don't you see? Only if you let them, Rachel replied fiercely. You can redefine love, ceremony, what it means to be accepted. You are not only a daughter, you are a woman forging her path. The fire ignited in Sarah's chest mingled with lingering doubt, propelling her into a whirlwind of thought. She focused her mind on the ideals that mattered to her: equity, love, joy without compromise. They weren't mere whims, they were her values, fundamental pieces of her identity, and they deserved recognition. In that moment, she realized that her wedding could serve as a declaration of her autonomy. You're right, she nodded slowly, energy coursing through her. Perhaps I can reinforce these ideas in the way I envision my wedding. Exactly. And you have to talk to Jake about it. Get him on board, Rachel encouraged, eyes alight with possibility. You two can create something beautiful together. Sarah found herself smiling at the prospect. You're right. He deserves to be included in this too. We should discuss how we want this to represent us, not cookie-cutter expectations. As they brainstormed ideas, contemplating a ceremony that would reflect their relationship, Sarah felt hope blossom within her. She was stepping into her own power, shedding roles that felt confining, and embracing a new era of self-definition. However, even as excitement burgeoned, a deeper fear simmered beneath the surface. What if she wasn't able to uphold her newfound vision amidst familial opposition? The night stretched on, a surreal blend of planning and pushing boundaries, yet doubt flickered like a candle flame in the shadows. How could she maintain her resolve when faced with the inevitable pushback? The following day, she would confront the reality of her parents' expectations head-on, but the mere anticipation of the discussions drained her buoyancy. Would she be strong enough to uphold her conviction, or would the weight of family loyalty threaten to undo her progress? As she prepared for the conversations ahead, one thing loomed heavy in her mind: she was ready to take the plunge into the unknown, but would she falter when faced with those she loved most? Sarah awoke to a fanfare of muted sunlight spilling through the curtains, but the serene morning felt like a mismatch to the storm brewing inside her. Today was the day. She would finally face her parents, ready to assert her vision for her wedding, no longer just a family obligation or societal expectation. As she brewed coffee, each drip reinforcing her determination, she focused on the unyielding core of belief she had begun to build. It flickered tumultuously, functional enough to ignite a fire within her but fragile enough to feel like it could be snuffed out at any moment. After pouring herself a steaming cup, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, rifling through notes she'd made the night before. Ideas for the ceremony filled pages, each representing the merging of her and Jake's vision, a tapestry of their love. But an undercurrent of doubt threaded through the fear of familial backlash on her choices. Would her parents interpret her decisions as a repudiation of their ideals? Taking a deep breath, she felt the gravity of her situation. Today was less about planning a wedding than it was about claiming her right to make choices free from guilt and fear. The stakes had never felt higher. When the clock struck noon, her heart raced as she approached her parents' house. She could already envision the initial hesitance on their faces, their words steeped in concern veiled as love. It struck her how often that love had been a chain she had worn for years, binding her to traditional norms that suffocated her identity. Sarah. Her mother greeted, pulling her into a tight embrace that felt suffocating rather than comforting. It's so exciting that you're here. I can't believe the wedding is coming up so quickly. Yeah, Sarah's voice trailed off as emotions tangled in her throat. Her father joined them in the kitchen, bustling in with a cheerful demeanor, oblivious to the urgency of the discussion about to unfold. How is the planning going? Any new updates? With every beat of her heart, the words fought to escape her lips. actually, I wanted to talk about the wedding. She struggled to keep her voice steady. This was her moment to be the architect of her own destiny. But as her parents turned toward her, anticipation flashed in their eyes, a cringe hung in the air. Sarah pressed on, "Jake and I have been discussing how we want the ceremony to reflect our values. We want it to be personal rather than traditional." A shadow passed over her mother's face. "But sweetie, it should be a ceremony that honors our family heritage. What about the traditions we've upheld for generations?" There it was, the argument she had anticipated, the immediate pressure to conform. "I understand, Mom, but I also want to create something that feels authentic to who I am. It's important to me that the day represents Jake and me as individuals, our love." Her mother's eyes narrowed slightly, a flash of disappointment flickering across her features. "But won't that create division? You know how your father and I have our expectations." Sarah's heart raced. The walls felt as if they were closing in, breathing her doubts back to life. "I hear you, but I can't ignore what this means to me. I can't play the role you want forever, Mom." Her father interjected, "We just want what is best for you. You don't want to end up regretting this, right?" The reminder of regret ignited a firestorm in her chest. They were, in their own way, trying to look out for her. But voices from the past echoed in her mind. Choices made out of obligation never brought happiness. "Regret comes from denying who I am to please others," she asserted, finally feeling a flicker of heat rise within her. "If we plan a wedding that doesn't resonate with us, isn't that its own kind of sadness?" The room hung heavily in silence, her parents exchanging glances. Abruptly, Sarah felt a fracture in what had always felt insurmountable. "Can we have an open conversation about this? I need to hear your thoughts, understand your perspective, too," she offered, creating space that felt unfamiliar but necessary. The cautious tension lingered, but Sarah sensed that there was a small opening, a chance to spark a real dialogue rather than a one-sided confrontation. As the conversation evolved, punctuated with hesitance and glimmers of understanding, Sarah realized she was navigating the treacherous waters of family expectations while anchoring herself firmly to her own identity. But what if this newfound openness slowly kicked the walls of their ideals beyond repair? What if the celebration she envisioned unraveled more than just traditions but also relationships? Today marked the start of a crucial confrontation, but it was also the beginning of a journey into uncharted emotional territories. Would she emerge with her vision intact or falter beneath the weight of familial loyalty? The following days felt like an intricate dance between defiance and a desperate quest for acceptance. After her parents heard her proposal, they had retreated to their corners, emotions swirling in confusing patterns. While the conversation had opened a door, it also unleashed doubts she hadn't fully reckoned with. Every time Sarah revisited the wedding plans, she felt the weight of their expectations pressing on her chest, heavy and unyielding. The original excitement behind her vision now felt tainted by the prospect of backlash. Ideas she had thought were life-affirming began morphing into seeds of resentment. Jake noticed the shift in her demeanor. "You seem different these days. Is everything all right?" he asked one evening as they lounged on the couch, both immersed in their own thoughts. "I feel like I'm walking a tightrope," Sarah admitted, the vulnerability of her admission washing over her. "I want to celebrate us, but I can't shake the fear that my parents won't accept it." Jake leaned closer, his expression earnest. "You have to be true to yourself. It sounds cliché, but this day is about our future, not their past." His words were a gentle balm, yet the tension wrapped around her heart tightened further. What if being true to herself resulted in a fracture she couldn't repair? That night, reflection flowed seamlessly into insomnia. Sarah pored over wedding blogs and Pinterest boards, searching for inspiration that resonated with both her vision and her parents' potential resistance. Somewhere in the midst of scrolling, she stumbled upon a video titled "Weddings That Defied Tradition." With a click, she watched couples narrating tales of bold choices, ceremonies atop mountains, artfully crafted themes that spoke to their uniqueness, and moments of unapologetic joy. Each story echoed a duality she found compelling. It wasn't just about rejecting tradition, it was about weaving new stories from the fabric of love. While her dreams started taking shape in vibrant colors, into real-life art pieces, the shadow of her parents' expectations loomed. The tipping point came the following weekend when she received an unexpected message from her father. "Let us have dinner, just us." The simplicity of the invitation tugged at her heartstrings. No pressure, she reassured herself before the evening unfolded. Yet as she sat across from him, her throat tightened. "Sarah, I've done a lot of thinking since you last came over," her father began, his tone cautious yet layered with sincerity. "I can see that this is important to you, and I want you to be happy." His admission warmed her heart, but it did little to quiet the gnawing anxiety. "Dad, I just wanted to reflect Jake and me. How we love each other. I need you to believe that it's not about rejecting you or Mom." "I get that, but traditions are outdated?" She cut in, surprising herself with the directness of her words. "Dad, you and Mom raised me with the foundation to pursue my own happiness. Why does that stop at my wedding?" A rush of silence followed, thicker than the air between them. The confrontation felt both terrifying and liberating, yet uncertainty still seeped in. "I want to support you, but part of me will always hold on to those traditions," he admitted, and Sarah felt the air shift, a change not yet defined but undeniably present. For that moment, they were no longer battling, they were exploring what it meant to love while holding on to personal beliefs. Sarah saw the tender vulnerability in his expression. She hoped this opening meant understanding, that perhaps they could meet in the middle not as adversaries, but as allies navigating uncharted waters together. But even with this moment of connection, doubt lingered ominously in the corners of her mind. Was this new understanding enough? The wedding plan still hung in limbo, a fragile thread woven with care but not yet secured. As Sarah returned home, the bright glow outside signaled the conclusion of a long day and the onset of a new chapter. But the struggle to bridge the gap between her vision and her family's expectations felt far from over. What would she sacrifice in her bid for authenticity, and could she truly orchestrate a celebration that allowed love to conquer all? The next test awaited at the planning meeting she had finally set up with both sets of parents. Would the emerging connection hold, or would they revert to traditional mindsets and expectations? The day of the planning meeting dawned bright and unyielding, as if the universe itself nudged Sarah toward clarity. She stood before the mirror, clad in a simple yet elegant dress, a symbol of her evolving intentions. Each thread wove together confidence and clarity, her reflection transformed from a girl torn between expectations to a woman embarking on her own journey. This gathering felt monumental, a collective moment where all paths would intersect. Her heart raced as she arrived at the cafe where they had agreed to meet, the quaint decor offering an uncharacteristic warmth. But today, warmth felt like a facade, the truth of the upcoming confrontation loomed large. Jake was the first to arrive, his smile reassuring. "You look amazing," he said, with a casual affection that seemed to bolster her spirit. "Thanks. I think I'll need this." She gestured to her coffee, hoping it would offer the strength she felt slipping through her fingers. As the minutes passed, nervous energy crackled in the air, and the cafe began to fill. The moment her parents stepped in, her stomach knotted. They exchanged uneasy glances, but it was her mother who managed a tight smile. "Sarah, dear. Thanks for coming," she replied, forcing the words out, feeling the weight of every syllable. Jake's parents arrived shortly after, their expressions blending concern and curiosity. Introductions commenced and the table, once dominated by unspoken tension, began filling with a form of cautious chatter. It was as if they were skirting the edges of a gathering while avoiding the core of the matter. "Shall we dive in?" Sarah finally asked, attempting to pry open the door to the conversation that had been long overdue. Her father cleared his throat. "We're here to support you, Sarah. Just want to ensure things go smoothly." There was sincerity in his voice, but the undertone of apprehension nestled beneath the surface. "Smoothly doesn't equal traditionally," Sarah retorted, surprising herself with the bite in her tone. A ripple of discomfort crossed the table. Had she just thrown down the gauntlet? "Okay, let us talk about ideas," Jake intervened, sensing the tension thickening. What about a wedding that brings both your families together rather than pits them against each other? Exactly. Sarah helped bolster the thought. Let us create something that represents both worlds. It's a conversation, not a confrontation. The sentence hung suspended in the air, and Sarah held her breath. Would her parents respond with resistance, or could they find a common ground? Jake's mother shifted in her seat, and Sarah sensed the hesitation. We want to validate your choices, but it's hard to let go of certain expectations. Tradition has meaning. We need to redefine meaning, Sarah asserted, her voice sharper now, her resolve hardening into something tangible. This day is a celebration of our love, not a reiteration of what has always been done. For a suffocating moment, silence filled the air, the type that felt heavy and unyielding but also charged with potential. Within that silence, Sarah contemplated the enormity of her declarations. Could they withstand the weight of expectation? Her father finally broke the silence, weariness visible in his gaze. What if we tried something new, but still honored those traditions, just differently? A flicker of hope ignited within Sarah. They were teetering towards compromise, perhaps teetering toward acceptance. But the fragility of this moment felt disconcerting, like standing on a cliff's edge, the winds of decision swirling around. As they brainstormed, laughter occasionally punctuating the air, Sarah felt a rush of empowerment. Ideas began flowing: mismatched decor, personalized vows, songs that represented their journey. This was a land of creation, not restriction. Boundaries blurred, and for a fleeting instant, she felt they were on the verge of reaching a consensus, a new narrative that honored her parents but also crystallized her vision. But just as clarity took hold, doubt crept back in like a lingering shadow. Could this fragile agreement actually withstand real-life disruptions? Would they falter when faced with the weight of their collective history? As whispers of excitement began weaving through the conversation, Sarah's heart raced with an empowerment she hadn't felt in a long while. Yet she couldn't shake the ominous feeling that the uncharted territory they were navigating might lead to an outcome she couldn't predict. The meeting wrapped without a full resolution, but they had created something new. Their differences were no longer walls but bridges under construction. It was a starting point, but how far could the conversation go before it unraveled into old patterns of resistance? As final agreements were made and parting hugs exchanged, Sarah's mind spiraled with the question that loomed larger than ever: would she be able to hold her ground in the face of inevitable pushback, and would her parents embrace the transformation lying ahead? The next chapter awaited her, one filled with both promise and peril as the wedding drew nearer. Could she summon the courage to confront those who might push for a return to tradition? The moment loomed as she took a breath, staring down a path lit by the unknown. The days following the meeting felt like a haze of anticipation and uncertainty. Each morning, Sarah stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her newly radiant sense of self. The dress was no longer just fabric, it was a metaphor for transformation. The intersecting paths of who she had been and who she wanted to become swirled within its seams. However, the image reflected back at her now carried the weight of familial expectations. She felt the pressure building. Thoughts hinged precariously on the fear that her newfound confidence would wane under the scrutiny of tradition. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from loved ones who had opinions on her plans. Every ping ignited a spectrum of anxiety, each notification becoming a reminder of the friction that still existed beneath the surface of reconciliation. After a particularly restless night, where doubts loomed like storm clouds, she decided to reach out to Jake. He had been a calming presence throughout this process, yet she needed more than reassurance, she needed action. "Can we meet?" she typed, uncertainty pooling in the pit of her stomach as she pressed send. They met at a park, a small escape from the chaos of her life. Jake appeared, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a smile that somehow made her worries feel less tangible. "I thought we could plan a bit? You okay?" he asked, his concern genuine. "I'm just anxious. I want this to be perfect," but she trailed off, gesturing vaguely around her as if the universe itself could answer her doubts. "What if they don't accept our ideas? What if I lose them completely?" "Hey," he said, gently taking her hand, grounding her. "You're not going to lose them. They're feeling this too. It's all new for everyone. But you need to stand firm in what you want. You have to embrace this change. His words, while comforting, still hovered next to the edge of a precipice. Sarah took a deep breath, picturing the conversation with her parents, how she had fretted, argued and ultimately communicated a desire for tradition to coexist with her identity. It was more than a wedding, it was a bid for authenticity in her life choices. I feel brave sometimes and then terrified at others. I don't want to be the one to burn bridges, Sarah admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe you won't have to. What if you could create a wedding that honors your stories? Just think, traditions can evolve without losing their roots. You could be the catalyst for that change, Jake proposed excitedly, picturing the idea taking flight. As they brainstormed together, ideas started to spark. They imagined a guest list that celebrated diversity, seating arrangements worked to integrate different families, and perhaps even a ceremony steeped more in Sarah and Jake's shared history than in outdated customs. But then a question rattled through Sarah's thoughts, an unseen specter. What if a significant number of them don't come? What if our efforts lead to a backlash? The prospect filled her with dread, a possibility she could hardly fathom. Jake paused, sensing the shift in her tone. I think the real question is, would you want them at a wedding that misrepresents who you are? You deserve to celebrate your love wholly, surrounded by those who see you for you. The others will either understand or they won't. The truth of his assessment hit her like a gust of wind. It wasn't the loss of guests that worried her, it was the ultimate acceptance of herself. Could she stand in her truth fiercely enough to let those unwilling to follow suit recede into the background? Feeling empowered by their exchange, Sarah envisioned herself taking a bold step forward. In a moment of clarity, she began sketching ideas on her phone's notepad, a tangible representation of her vision. The wedding would not merely speak to tradition, it would radiate her essence, her joy, and Jake's unwavering support. But as they wrapped their meeting, a quiet dread reminded her that facing her parents again would soon be inevitable. Would she still have the strength to combat age-old traditions, no matter how daunting the pushback? Springing forward, the atmosphere thickened with that unshakable intensity. With a ceremony on the horizon, she needed to find new strategies and dialogues that would fortify her resolve. The next meeting, she decided, would not just be another talk, it would be her crucible of truth. As she closed her notebook, determination settled like a warm blanket around her shoulders. Sarah felt the strange elation that came with the blend of fear and excitement, like standing at a precipice, the drop visible but the possibilities ahead immense. She stood ready to confront a future wrought with questions, but also filled with the promise of a celebration as unique as the love it would honor. What would be the tipping point that pushed her past the fear and towards an authentic manifestation of her dreams? The time had come to craft her narrative, and in that, she would discover what it truly meant to celebrate love. The days turned into a significant blur as Sarah navigated the lead-up to her pivotal conversation with her parents. Each waking hour was fragmented by frenzied thoughts and a relentless internal dialogue that surged between hope and dread. Her notebook filled with ideas and plans, yet it also contained frantic sketches of her fears, an emotional map of what could go wrong. In the quiet of her home, she replayed every possible scenario, dissecting her parents' faces, their surprise, disappointment, or perhaps even acceptance. Each visualization pressed heavily against her chest, connecting her pulse to the undeniable realization that she was reaching the climax of her personal renaissance. On the day of their meeting, Sarah dressed carefully, choosing something simple yet elegant, a dress that wouldn't overshadow her body but would allow her to exist confidently within it. As she walked to her parents' house, the familiar streets echoed a youthful innocence she felt she was leaving behind, the kind of innocence that dictated obedience without question. Arriving at her childhood home, the sight of her parents waiting in the living room ignited a flicker of nostalgia. Her mother's warm smile offered a fleeting sense of security, but the pit in her stomach tightened. "Let us sit outside," she suggested, hoping the fresh air would provide a hint of clarity. Once outside, the conversation began with the usual pleasantries, a gradual warm-up that felt more like a weighty montage of smiles layered with hidden tension. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Sarah took a deep breath and dove into the heart of it. "I've been thinking a lot about the wedding," she started, heart racing as she looked at their expectant faces. "I want to do things a little differently, reflect who Jake and I are instead of what's expected." Her mother's expression shifted subtly, a wrinkle of concern framing her brow. "Different how?" Curious yet cautious, she searched Sarah's eyes, perhaps hoping for the familiar path of tradition to unravel into view. Framing her desires in gentle language, Sarah carefully laid out her vision. The ceremony wouldn't be tethered strictly to ritual, but would intertwine cultural elements from both families, creating something uniquely their own. She illustrated seating arrangements meant to bridge cultural gaps and highlighted personal anecdotes that could replace age-old customs. As she spoke, she felt an exhilarating mix of vulnerability and empowerment surge within her. Each word was a release, and with every explanation, she chipped away at the barricades that had confined her for so long. "This wedding is our celebration, and I want our families to see it as a merging of our lives, not a schism of customs." Silence hung in the air, heavy with the weight of unspoken thoughts as her father shifted uncomfortably. "You know how the family feels about this," he said quietly, shaking his head slightly. "We cherish our traditions. It's just what we do." The haunting specter of doubt whispered its familiar taunt. Would challenging the status quo lead to estrangement? But Sarah fought against that impulse, bolstered by the clarity she had cultivated with Jake. "I respect our traditions, but they shouldn't suffocate our happiness. Can't we honor the past while stepping into the future?" "Honoring tradition doesn't mean you can't be happy," her mother interjected softly, but there was a resolute edge to her tone, one that seekers of change often encountered. "We just want what's best for you." "Why can't what's best for me include my voice?" Sarah countered, the fire of her resolve crackling within her. "Every decision I'm making brings me closer to who I am. If some people can't accept that, then maybe I need to rethink the relationships I'm prioritizing." As the evening wore on, debates morphed into discomfort. Each statement exchanged felt like another crack splintering between her and her parents. Yet within that dissonance, Sarah's spine straightened incrementally as she began to see a flicker of her own strength. Unraveling. Would her courage ignite a willingness for dialogue? With the sunset casting long shadows across the yard, she could sense that further conversations were inevitable, but it mattered less now who might walk away disappointed. She was claiming her narrative with each moment spent in this difficult dialogue, even in the face of potential rejection. But as she walked back to her apartment, exhaustion swept over her alongside a pulse of determination. As she scrolled through her notes of wedding ideas, a stark realization dawned: the roots of pride and love intertwined would guide her path through tumultuous waters. What if those closest to her couldn't embrace her new beliefs? That fear brewed a storm inside, yet ignited a determination to push forward. The time was ripe for her next step, a confrontation that would challenge her relationships and lay bare her commitment to honor her authentic self amid relentless pressure. And so the question surfaced, merging anxiety with anticipation: how could she remain true to her vision while nurturing those connections that mattered most? The next chapter of this journey loomed, echoing the conviction that her wedding could indeed lay the foundation for a future where love transcends tradition. The week leading up to the wedding day unfolded with a mix of joy and tension. Sarah found herself oscillating between anticipation and trepidation. The echoes of her parents' concerns still lingered, they weighed heavily on her mind, creating an undercurrent of anxiety just beneath the excitement. However, she had also taken definitive steps to design a ceremony that genuinely reflected her and Jake's identities. Clarity had replaced confusion around her vision, and for the first time, she felt prepared to confront whatever might come. On the morning of the rehearsal, the air was charged with the vibrancy of blossoming flowers surrounding the venue. As she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair, she took a moment to reflect. The image staring back at her was one of confidence, of a woman who had fought to carve out a space for her own happiness amidst the clamor of family expectations. The rehearsal started with tentative excitement among family members and friends. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as Jake stepped onto the altar, his warm smile bolstering her resolve. Together, they were a united front, ready to navigate the intricacies of love intersecting with traditional norms. As they walked down the aisle, Sarah felt the weight of her choices crush and liberate her in equal measure. The faces of their assembled friends, those who had wholeheartedly supported them, sparkled with love and acceptance. It was a glimpse into the future she had envisioned, punctuated by laughter and joyful tears. For every hesitant glance from family members, there were assurances from friends who cheered on her courage. The moment of truth arrived when her parents stepped forward to offer their blessings. Would they truly accept this transformation, or would they revert to their apprehensions? In that instant, Sarah felt her breath hitch. Uncertainties loomed, spinning in her chest like a storm. "Sarah, we have always loved you," her mother began, the tremor in her voice both poignant and sincere. "And while we hold our traditions dear, seeing you so authentically happy has changed our perspective. This day, your day, is about more than what has come before. It's about the love you two have created." As emotions swirled, the misgivings she'd held began to dissolve. Sarah laced her fingers through Jake's, finding comfort in his unwavering support. Her father remained silent for a beat before speaking. "It can be hard to embrace change," he admitted, a flicker of uncertainty married with newfound understanding softening his gaze. "But Sarah, if this is who you want to be, if this reflects your happiness with Jake, then nothing else matters. We stand with you." Those words transformed her trepidation into an early wave of exhilaration. Here was a bridge being built, a connection rekindled beneath the banner of acceptance. Sarah faced her parents, determination surfacing within her mixed emotions. "I know this wedding seems like a break from tradition," she responded, "but it's rooted in love and respect for where we all come from. I hope we can honor both our history and our paths forward together." Tears slipped down her father's cheek, his nod of acknowledgement serving as an unspoken truce between her desires and his familial sentiments. With each shared glance exchanged among her parents and Jake, Sarah felt fortified. They weren't abandoning tradition, they were weaving a new fabric of meaning, richer and more inclusive than anything before. That night, amidst a flurry of decorations and hilarious misadventures with the wedding party, the air was electric with the palpable joy of acceptance. Dancing beneath twinkling fairy lights, Sarah relished in every moment spent surrounded by those who understood the depths of her struggle. It became clear that this wedding was about authentic celebration, one that honored not just her love for Jake but the rich inheritance of her family's history. On the wedding day itself, as she stood at the altar, flowers clutched tightly in her hands, she couldn't help but feel a stunning sense of closure wrapping around her spirit. This ceremony was a declaration her transformation had blossomed fully, and she was ready to embrace the future. Surrounded by laughter, joy, and the celebration of their union, Sarah felt undeniably proud of every step she had taken. The vows were exchanged amid tears and laughter, each promise symbolizing not only her commitment to Jake but her newfound autonomy. The emotional weight shifted from anxiety to profound fulfillment. A moment of total clarity emerged, confirming that she had conquered not just familial expectations but the deepest parts of herself previously unacknowledged. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden shadows on the couple's first dance, Sarah marveled at how far she had come. In choosing love, she had defined herself in ways she never knew possible. Now fully grounded, recognized, and flourishing in her identity, Sarah stepped out of the shadows and into the light of her future. With this vibrant chapter complete, Sarah was ready to embrace the adventures that lay ahead, no longer hindered by expectations, but inspired by a genuine journey of love that would shape her life. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for these inspiring narratives. Comment with your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.